Welcome to the Safety Moment podcast. My guest today is Mr. Wiley Davidson, a motivational speaker that I've had the pleasure of working with only once. I hope we get the chance to do it again. Wiley, thanks for joining me today and for talking about what you do.
Yes, good morning. I'm happy to be part of this. I've been lurking, watching from the sides of you doing these things for a while now, and I said to myself, I need to get on there. I need to have a conversation with Mike. So I appreciate you having me.
Well, it's kind of cool. I mean, like so many of my friends and colleagues around the globe, who are in this business, we are treated to uh, presentations or safety talks or personal experience discussions talks from a variety of speakers, and some of them have a very strong message of a personal experience that happened, or a very strong safety message. And it always, some of the speakers, and this was a personal experience that happened to them, and it was the catalyst for what they do, and they're very good at what they do. But for safety is such a broad topic. It's something that it's kind of like trying to nail jelly to a wall sometimes. You can't really nail it to the wall. But I'm curious, like, before we get into the meat of our talk today, tell me about yourself. Where are you today? Are you at home today?
Yes, I'm at home in Buffalo, New York, Grand Island, to be more specific for those folks that are more aware or know this part of the country. But yeah, that's where I'm calling from. I call it my speakeasy. It's our lounging area where we love to do things like this and just kind of kick back. It's also a nice place to just kind of let those creative juices flow.
Kind of looks like you're in Scuttlebutt Lodge. I think you're an SCTV fan, so you'll probably over there.
100%. When Doug and I, our production gentleman, we had a great conversation. We did sound check. It took about 3 minutes. And then the other 35 was just us talking about growing up in this area and in being culturally cross-border, from nothing. I always say I'm as much Canadian as I'm American when it comes to culture, just from what
Yeah.
we grew up with,
Yeah.
television, music. Yeah. But it is cozy, isn't
And
it?
I'm from back east. Oh, it is. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. And I'm from back east originally. So I
Whereabouts?
grew up not too far from the U.S., Montreal.
Okay.
Yeah. So I
All right.
grew
Very
up
cool.
very close actually, I was on the south shore of Montreal. So even closer to the U.S. border.
Yeah. Closer towards
Yeah.
like
I was,
Messina, stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Plattsburgh type thing, right?
Plattsburgh.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So we had all the American channels and we're very Americanized, even though I'm
Yeah.
sure our friends in the East will say they're not, but it's very Americanized. So, but tell me about yourself. How did you get into this? How did you become a motivational speaker? Did you just wake up one morning and say, I'm going to do this? Or what was a catalyst for you?
That is such a great question. And it's kind of a loaded question for me because there's so many different ways I can answer it. The small version is I had no idea I would ever be doing this for a living. Though my mother always said, you're either going to be a politician or an actor because you never shut up. Right. And I'm not much into politics. So this is as close, I think, as I'm going to get to acting. But my career started off in a totally different direction. I was in the retail industry. I sold products. Right. I was a manager. I led teams, and I've always had those, what I call the signs. It's actually kind of, don't say anything, but I'm working on a book that kind of talks about looking for the signs. Right. And there was always those indications that eventually I'd be doing this, but I never saw that path clear. How I did get into it, I worked for a safety supply company here in Buffalo. I sold safety supplies, was also kind of their face whenever they would do something publicly. If it was a trade show, like we hosted an annual safety event, I was the MC. If you called the store and got put, or the company and got put on hold, I was the guy talking about raincoats and gloves, So there was, again, those signs, but I never really kind of connected the dots until I got an opportunity to do this professionally. Our vice president created a message that originally was like a one-hit wonder. Like, okay, I'll do it because like a client asked us, hey, I was at this really cool conference. They had this awesome presenter. We want one of those, but we don't have any money. So he said, okay, I'll put something together. And
Right.
it literally caught fire to the point where he couldn't do both. He couldn't be the vice president and be that guy. So he's like, well, if we're going to get anybody to do it, it's going to be the guy that doesn't shut up. So that's kind of how I got into this. But it's interesting how it's really lit a fire within me to want to give back, to give more. You know, when I created Legacy, Leaving a Safety Legacy, for those of you that have never heard of me before, it was originally designed for the end user, the guys and gals doing the heavy lifting, doing the work. And then soon after I started presenting, I'm getting feedback from entry-level employee to C-suite executive, how the message impacted them. And it's all different levels. It's not just on a work level, it's on a personal level. It's on a, you know, if you remember my presentation, I talk a lot about being safe off the job just as much as I do on the job. And I think those messages really resonate with my attendees. You know, you had mentioned a few minutes ago how there's a lot of people in my industry, my colleagues, as I'll call them, that I classify as a victim story. Something traumatic
Yes,
happened to
yes.
them. They talk about what led up to it, the event, and the aftermath. And those
Yeah.
messages are important. Don't ever think for
They're
a
very
minute I'm
powerful. They're
discount.
very
Yes,
powerful.
they're very important and they need to be told. But I have found that often they become acute, especially if you're not doing that work, if you're not in that
Yeah.
industry. Now,
Yeah.
a good
Yeah.
presenter will not make it about the event. They'll make it about your actions, right? How you
Hmm.
reacted to it before and after.
Almost like a
But
almost like a post-mortem, right?
yes, right, right. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
those messages are important, but I find, like, so many times people have come up to me and said, I missed the first 5 minutes of what you were saying because I was trying to figure out what was wrong with you, right? You got both hands, you got both legs, you can string a sentence
Yeah. Yeah.
together. You know, there
Yeah.
must be something under the surface, but that's the point of Legacy, is that it's not just a safety message. It's a culture message. And I'm at the point now where I'm modifying my presentations to better meet the client's needs. If they want it about safety, I can make it about safety. If they want to make it about culture, I can make it about culture. If they want to make it about leadership, I can make it about leadership. So I am loving every minute of what I do. It took me 50 something years to find my calling, but I definitely have.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, the victim stories, and there's a couple of just great speakers and topics that I've been witness to over the years. One of them is Eric Giguère, and I've had
Very
the
good friend.
opportunity to hear him speak and I've had the opportunity to hear him speak a few times. The other gentleman I heard once in person, and it was an awestruck type of presentation, was Charlie Moorcraft. Remember Charlie? And
We call him the godfather of motivational speaking. Really, he started a movement. He really did.
for sure, if you haven't heard him speak, for anybody listening, try and do that, because it's an excellent speech, and what he kept coming back to in his talk was, he kept saying, "For what? I cut these corners, I did this, I did, and for what?"
Hmm.
And that, just those two words, "For what? Why did I do that?" It was so powerful. And then when I had the opportunity, you joined us for our 40th anniversary and safety conference here in,
Hmm.
in Banff, when Utility Safety
Loved it.
Partners had our 40th. That was a fun time. There's no question
I
about it.
love that part of the country. I absolutely do.
We're proud of it, and
Hmm.
to have that event in Banff, Alberta. I mean, it's just the icing on the cake. We're spoiled because it's right here. I mean, it's down
Hmm.
the road, and whereas there are people who plan their entire lives from another country, I'm going to go to Banff someday, and we can go there for the afternoon.
Yeah.
So we're spoiled that way. But to have the event there, it was a milestone event for sure. And the committee looked to a bunch of different speakers, and they selected you. And to be honest, I hadn't heard of you beforehand. And you know what, like you said a few moments ago, I was like, okay, well, what's this guy's story? Like you said, he has all his limbs, all his fingers and toes, and yet you gave your talk that day, it really hit, and in all the right ways. And I was really glad to have met you that day. And so I was always curious. I never had the opportunity to ask, how did you get into this? So that's, now you've answered that question.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because everybody has a different path, right? How did you get
Hmm.
to where you are? If somebody was to ask me, well, it wasn't a straight line. I'll tell you that. And it often isn't. I'm glad to hear that. But when you walk into a workplace for the first time, and then somebody invites you to speak, and you're going to start doing your homework. So whether you walk into figuratively or physically into a workplace for the first time, what's what are you looking for in terms of their safety culture, and uh, how do you prepare for this?
Yeah, so I've actually created it's a document that I follow. It's a guideline for me, but it's bullet points to that key conversation that I have with a client. I want to know, where's your culture at? What are you doing? What brought us together to talk? Why, did you see me
Yeah.
speak? Was I recommended by someone else? And more importantly, or most importantly, how can I help? Right? What do you want me to give to your team to make it move the needle, right? What are some of your pain points, and it's not always about these are the things that are wrong, right? A lot of clients that I work with have a great culture of safety, right? They want me to kind of keep it going. And I always say, we're all saying
Yeah.
the same
Underline
thing,
it.
right? There isn't an original creative safety thought in a long time. We're all playing the same sheet music. I'm just spinning at a much faster RPM. So maybe the way I present it or I deliver it, it's not any different than what Mike's saying to his team, but it's just a different way of saying it, right? I use the analogy of like when we
Hmm.
were kids, our parents would tell us things all the time. Okay, mom, got it. Whatever, dad, right off our shoulder. And then the neighbor or a family friend or a relative would say the exact same thing, and it was crystal clear.
Yep.
I'm the neighbor. I'm
Yep.
the family friend, right? And what's really cool about what I do is that sometimes I can say things that maybe leadership can't, or maybe the safety committee can't. Obviously there's limitations to what you want to say, but I can get my point across
Yeah.
or your point across in a fun, energizing, humorous way. I mean, you've seen it. I love to add humor into my presentation. It's not just get up there and preach for an hour. I get in the audience. I love working with the audience members. It's good stuff.
So when you go into you're hired to do this, you come in to speak, and leadership, people like me, they want you to come in. Maybe we're seeing something in our safety culture that needs a bit of a shot in the arm.
Hmm.
Maybe we're seeing people taking a little more chances. But why do you think experienced people take shortcuts?
Oh God, it comes down to our human nature. It really is. It
You think
comes
so?
down to
Yeah.
our instinct, right? It's almost like we're wired to find an easier, quicker, shorter way to do things. And like when it comes to I'll talk to people about, what are the causes of injuries? Is it environment? Is it procedures? Is it training? Is it equipment? And all of them have the underlying connection, and it's our human nature, it's our behavior, it's why we do what we do. We're always been taught to get it done. Nobody ever said, especially when we were younger, hey, hurry up and get that done, but get it done safely. It's just get it done, right? And come to
Yeah.
me when you're done. Let me know because I
Get it
got
done.
9 other things for you to do, kind of thing. So it's our human nature. That's why we take those shortcuts, and I've had the opportunity to utilize some of the experiences that I've had, both personally as well as working in that safety world for those years before I started talking about it professionally, that are great examples. And every example that I share, you watch the audience and they're all like, I've done that. I've totally done
Yeah.
that.
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
or they're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
he's talking about you." That kind of things. And I think that's part of the success or the allure to legacy is that it's almost like I've been told so many times, it's like we're just talking. It's just like, like I forgot that there were 300 people in the room. I felt like you and I were just talking, and that's part of
Hmm.
my, I guess, my persona, my delivery. I just ask Doug. He'll tell you. I love to talk.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, to have that one-on-one capacity in a room of hundreds of people, that's when you're connecting, and you're not just doing it with one, you're doing it with individuals all across that room. That's what I find hard today, a little harder today, because, since COVID, many organizations, mine included, utility safety partners included, we're completely remote now. We don't have an office. We don't have a place where we come in. And, having that place where we would go every day or meet each other, that breeds culture. It
Mm,
certainly helps you to breed
I
culture.
miss it.
And I I
I
I
do.
do
I miss
too.
it.
I mean, for a variety of reasons I do. For other reasons, I think, that this is a way to go. I come from the age where I went to work. For the past 40 years, I went to work, and now I don't. Now I
Mhm.
walk into my office here at home, and this is where I work. But that to try and maintain that safety culture or culture of anything, and doesn't matter. In this case, it's safety. It's different today than I think than when you do have that remote work setting. And I talk with my colleagues and my senior leadership colleagues and say, we have to address this. Saying we're ISO certified is great. That doesn't get into the deep dive here of maintaining a culture that we're trying to not only build but maintain. And we had something happen recently where I thought, okay, we empower people to make the right decisions, but what compelled that person to do what they did, right? And they had every best intention, but it looks like there was a risk that was taken that in hindsight wasn't necessary. And to me, that speaks more to the culture of what compelled them to feel that way. Right. And I have
Mhm.
been in that situation too. Many years ago, I was involved in an incident that hindsight, I should never have done what I
Mm.
did, but I felt compelled to be somewhere at all costs. And
Mhm.
why did I feel that way? Was that just me, or was that the organization's pressure, the underlying pressure that was always there? And, to this day, I'm not sure. I have a pretty good idea, but I'm not sure.
Mhm.
And that's what I don't want to be. I don't want to be that organization that is imposing some kind of phantom pressure on employees that says, at all costs, I need to do X, Y, Z. Nope,
Mhm.
I want you to make the right call. But at the same time, from the organization, if if there's a situation that's unsafe or whatever, maybe it's weather. I don't know. Look, nobody's going anywhere today because the weather's horrible, and
Mhm.
I don't care if you had to be somewhere. That's just not happening. So when I look at that, I'm trying not to micromanage. So I'm not a micromanager, but at some point I'm going to have to step in. In that regard, and it's a long-winded diatribe to get to my question, but what's the most effective way that you think leaders like me can influence safety without micromanaging? That's a tough question.
Yeah. If I had to
How can
pick
I do
one
my job better, Wiley? How can I do my job better? It's what I'm asking.
if I could narrow it down to one word, which I'm not, but that one word would be sustainable, right? You need to make your message sustainable, and it's got to be consistent, right? I had an old boss that said consistency wins championships, right? Blocking and tackling, doing the not so fun things to make it a success. And that's a big pitfall with a lot of my clients, unfortunately. They'll spend all this time, energy, resources, funds, have me come out for a day and present, and some will make the event very impactful, right? I always say stopping production is way more impactful than anything I can say, because you're telling the employees, look, it's this important, right? Your safety is this important. There's nothing more important than that. I say in my presentation, is safety the number one priority, or is it the bottom line? Well, when it
Hmm.
boils down to it, it's the bottom line. That's why companies are in business, but good companies will only do that if they can do it safely. So being able to make that connection, being sustainable, succinct message, everyone's on the same page, but then what do you do with it tomorrow? Next week, next month, 3 months from now. And, in my previous life, I worked with a lot of companies that I helped them not only create that day, but create an outline so that they have an idea of what components go into making it sustainable, ultimately making it effective. And it could be as robust or as thin as maybe your budgets will allow, but there's a lot of things that you can do out there that have zero cost. It's just effort. So, again, to answer your question, I think it's being sustainable, making sure that that message is not only impactful on that day, not just acute, like I used the definition before, but how do I keep it, relative and in front of mind? Because when we get back to our jobs, what happens? Everything floods in. We start thinking about all the things that we didn't get a chance to do. Oh, we had the line down for 3 hours during that safety event. Now all that work backed up. Or as professionals, as leaders, we go to a conference and it's great. We get all this awesome content, and then
Yeah.
we go
Yeah.
back in that pile on your desk. And where do you take the stuff that you just learned? Right to the bottom. I'll get to
Yeah.
that when I
Goes
get
to the
through
bottom
all
or the
this
back
stuff.
of the back
Yeah,
burner.
and
Yep.
and then 6 months from now, you finally pull it out and you're like, "Who's Wiley Davidson? Oh, yeah, I remember who that guy was," right? So
Yep. Yep.
it's and I all the time, everything I talk about, every bullet point that I make, every reference, they are nothing more than tools. They're tools designed for you to do your job better, safer, more efficient, right? But you got to use them, right? You could build a shed or you could
Yeah.
build a
Yeah. Yeah.
mansion, but if you don't use them, you're not building anything. Use the tools.
That's right. That's right. So when you're out speaking and you have everybody's seeing you, but you're seeing everybody. Um, and I've been in that situation too, where I'm presenting to a group or whatever, and some people they're capturing every word, others might be preoccupied or whatever. How do you try to reach everybody? Do you take the time to sort of turn your body to this area where I don't think this guy is really hearing it? Maybe he needs to be. Do you have this kind of vibe you're feeling when you're doing it?
That's a really interesting question. And, I've been doing this for a long time. And I learned quickly that not everyone's going to give you the same reaction back. I would take it personally, when people weren't listening, or I felt they weren't listening, or you read those, what I call the smile sheets, the responses on the feedback to the conference. And there's all these ones that, oh my gosh, he was great, blah, 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 blah. And then there's that one that was like, he didn't do this. And I'm like, and that's the one that I hang on. I'm like, well, why? No, let me talk to that guy or that gal. Let me
Yeah, yeah,
explain,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
realize that you're not going to get the reaction from everyone the way you would love to, right? But I always,
Hmm.
I even preach it in Legacy. You never know the impact you're making, and I use the story about, I did two presentations, a morning and an afternoon, at an old coal burning power plant, Southern Pennsylvania. And the morning presentation was awesome. Standing room only. The guys and gals were totally engaged. I'm like, dude, you got a great culture of safety. We went to lunch. I walked back in and there's one young man at the table all by himself. One. And I'm
Mm,
like, hey man, you the early bird? He's like, nope, I'm the only bird. And
I'm
he
it.
quickly tried to say, I don't want to waste your time. If you got other things to do, I get it. And I'm like, no, hold on. We're here. Let's do this. And it went from a
Yeah, yeah,
presentation to a conversation. And I love to tell that story. His name was Josh. Early on in that conversation, I realized how young this guy looked. And I'm like, can I ask you a personal question? And he's like, yeah, 21, just turned it. And what hit me was that was my son's age at the time. And I thought to myself, if that was Colin sitting there instead of Josh, I'd want whoever was playing the part of me to give that young man just as much love and attention like I gave those folks that morning, like I do on stage every single time. And Mike, that became a watershed moment in my speaking career, because it was at that, not even during the conversation, it was on that car ride home. I realized I could have mailed that in, couldn't I have? I could have easily turned to the safety manager and said, I'm not doing a presentation for one. You're on the hook for the payment. Honey, I'll be home for dinner. But that's not doing the right thing every single time, whether it's a class of one or 1,001. And I've been on both ends of those spectrums. So I tell myself, when I see those people that maybe I don't feel like I'm connecting, they're still listening. Right. There's still those Joshes in the audience that I'm impacting. I talk a lot about personality assessments. I do workshops on disc personality styles. And that's a great example of that for me to, in the moment, check down and say, not everyone's a D or not everyone's an I, like I'm an I, I'm
yeah,
a extrovert. I love that. Woo, and my fiance, who's a great presenter, is the polar opposite. Like at the end of a 1 hour presentation, I'm here and she's here. Her tank is empty. She did
yeah,
a great job,
yeah.
but it's just a different personality. So that's kind of how I
Is she
address it.
presenting sort of the same topics though? I mean, is
Yeah,
she
so she's got
also?
a real
I mean,
job. She's
yeah,
she does training from entry-level employee to C-suite executives at a group of hospitals in the greater Buffalo area. She's at the brink of wanting to look at retirement, so she moonlights with me from time to time. She does about 5 or 6 presentations a year where I'll go and speak leading the event, and then she'll talk about let's talk about what Wiley, which is great because historically production and safety never really
yeah.
talked, right? There's always been that
No,
disconnect. And
that's right.
so she kind of brings it full circle, different voice, a different perspective, and she's phenomenal. I just watch her on stage and I'm like, I got so much work to do. She's so good.
So how many years have you been doing? How many years have you been doing this now, Wiley?
I celebrated my 10th year 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
Yeah, 2 weeks
congratulations.
ago it came up.
That's
I was, yeah, 2 weeks ago. I was, and it's funny because I was in Texas working with a electric co-op down there, and in my Facebook memories, it came up, 10 years ago, first
Yeah,
presentation. And
yeah.
so I commented, 10 years ago was the first time, and this presentation tomorrow is going to hit a little different. And it really did. And it's great because that was the second time they had me back. I came back this most recent time to do my follow up to my legacy message. It's more of a, how do I unleash that energy that we all have that we sometimes choose not to give, discretionary energy. And it was great. It was great to be able to come back, and the audience was fantastic. I had some of the same people that I chatted with 3 years ago come back up. It's when I saw you were on the bill, I was so happy, so it's cool. It's cool that we have that kind of relationship. Hopefully you and I can work together again at some point.
Well, I hope so, and I'm just curious, so how many presentations are you doing a year roughly now?
So conferences,
I'm
I'd
sure it
say,
varies.
it does. It varies. Like last year was a phenomenal year. And it's funny, in my previous life, I said when I worked with that safety supply company doing this, I also worked with a lot of other. Eric Jagier is a great example, right? Eric's another New York boy, lives a couple hours down the street in Waterloo. We've been friends forever. And I would work with other presenters. Like we would have people come in and speak at our conference or our event. And I would tell those people that are just starting, it takes 3 years. It takes 3 years of planting seeds, watering them, and then walking away. Some sprout up quick, some sprout up after a couple of years, but they all come to fruition at some point. And last year was that for legacy, at least, was that turning point. It was a phenomenal year. So to answer your question, conferences at 25, but then there are so many what I classify as end users, those clients that go to your event that say, I want my team to hear this too. Right. So, and I don't know what I love more. I mean, I love the conferences because everybody's already drinking from the fountain, right? We're all
Yeah, they're all
like-minded,
jacked up
safety.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah. They're excited to be
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and from that point, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to give you some tools to make your program better. But I love talking to the end user. 2 weeks ago, I was doing an event local, and I had an attendee member come up and literally hugged me, right? Just came up, gave me a big, huge hug. And he's like, brother, man, this is exactly what we need to hear. And they have a great culture of safety. They already are drinking from the fountain. Again, just a different perspective, all saying the same thing, different delivery. And, I never get tired of having those conversations. I will never run out of an event. I will wait until everyone I've had an opportunity to interact with, I can. Because I love it. I love hearing what my thoughts and ideas and how they impact them. It's good stuff.
There's gotta be a couple that stick out in your mind
Yeah.
as
Yeah. Well,
being, "This is
obviously
what I
that
this really hit."
conversation, the conversation of one with Josh is probably one of my most impactful ones.
Yeah, yeah,
I recently did an event for a group of crane operators, riggers, guys that are, working in an outdoor environment. And I did fostering, which again, a lot of it's emotional intelligence. It's your discretionary energy. It's why do I do what I do? And me and the contact were both we're like, let's see how this goes, and it was
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
And it was great, every one of them leaning in, heads going up and down, and conversations afterwards. So that was another one to me that told me personally, you're doing the right thing. You're just keep doing what you're doing. You're hitting your mark. Yeah.
So you've been doing this for 10 years, but how do you not get complacent?
Mm. One thing that I do is I'm always trying to make my message better. I'm always coming up with a different way, a more unique way, a different presentation. It's funny you asked this question. Yesterday morning, I was having a conversation with one of the guys that I play hockey with, and we were talking about our routines in the morning. And I said, I usually get up around this time, and that time that I give to myself every morning, I use it to energize my day. I use it for creativity. I listen to podcasts. I read books. There's all these different things that I do to charge my batteries, and it's funny because when I first started this process, I had this notebook and I would write down all these thoughts and ideas. And I'm like, okay, some way I'm going to use that, and some of these books are 3, 4, 5 years old, but I keep filling up these notebooks and I'm like, wait a minute. I wrote something about that. So I go back. It's my process of just finding it. So I don't get complacent because especially or even if it's a place I've already been to, right? I'm so fortunate to do what I do for a living, right? If you would have told me when I graduated high school that I would travel North America, including some beautiful places in Canada, the world. I've been to Denmark delivering, safety messages to a group of 8 different nations all in one room. I
Wow.
mean, incredible. I would have told you were crazy. You know what I wanted to do? I wanted to be a radio DJ. Put me in a little room with
Yeah.
some records and away I go, WYLO radio, that kind of thing. But I've been so blessed to be able to do what I do, and I think about some of those moments. Another great one is again in Canada. Maybe it is Canadian that I'm missing the most, but I was in Vernon, British Columbia. I was working for a client that had sites all over North America, and we flew into Kelowna, drove up to, Vernon. And I remember asking the hotel guy, where's a good, this is a beautiful part of the country. Give me a hike, don't kill me,
Yeah.
but don't give me a walk in
Yeah.
the park either. And he said to me, he
Yeah.
goes, you take this road goes from blacktop to gravel to dirt. You're going to think you're lost, keep going. And then eventually you'll get to this spot. And it led me to the end of this, like a park where there was only one other car in the parking lot. Never saw that person. We must have walked in different paths around the path, but it led me to one of those beautiful lakes that look off, as far as the eye can see kind of thing. And I remember sitting down and thinking to myself, how did I get here? Right? How did I,
Yeah. Yeah.
just some
Yeah.
kid from Tonawanda, New York with a high school diploma, how did I get to where I'm at? So, I get a little emotional just telling that story. It never gets old for me. I never take a presentation for granted. I never take a location for granted, Fortunate enough to be going back again this year up to Hearst, Ontario. And I called it Hearst. And then Doug said,
Yeah.
oh no, it's Hearst, right?
First.
Hearst. And I've never been that far north until, last year. And the joke was between Doug and I, the morning of the presentation, it was May 1st. And I came out to get in my vehicle and it was covered in like 5 inches of snow. And even
Yeah.
from
Oh, yeah.
Buffalo, I'm like,
Yeah.
seriously? Right? It's May.
You're a
Yeah,
ways north. Yeah. You're a
but
ways north in
what a great
northern
group, though.
Ontario.
They're,
Yeah.
they're having me back again
Yeah.
this year to do fostering, to keep that. Again, a great example of a company that gets it, that has a great culture of safety, and they just want to keep moving that needle. Fantastic. So, yeah, it never
And you're
gets old for
talking
me.
about, safe. That's good. And you're talking about stuff, safety, which can be emotional. It can be heavy. And, to hear that you've been able to stay grounded by taking in the local environment or whatever and absorbing what's going on. I think that's probably one of those things you're doing. You're not even realizing this is how I maintain that equilibrium because when you're talking safety, sometimes you're being pulled into a site or a location to give a talk because something happened,
Hmm.
right? And it's probably very hard not to get too far into that, but you got to keep that equilibrium, that level. I know for myself, if I'm listening to a speaker and it is one of the, as we said earlier, perhaps a victim presentation, it's really hard for me not to feel that emotion. And again, Charlie Moorcraft, for what? Why did I do this?
Hmm.
And very powerful, and it stayed with me. And, when I had a situation that happened to me years ago, and I thought, what the hell did I do this for? And it really made me ask the question. And to this day, I'm not really quite sure. Right? But I know what I
Hmm.
did wasn't the right choice. I made the wrong choice at some point, and I
Yeah.
put myself, as only me, but I put myself at serious risk. And thankfully, I lived to tell the tale. But when I think back and you can almost get yourself into a sweat. Like, for what? Why this happen? So I'm glad to hear that, you're able to find those moments
Hmm.
that keep you grounded because it's not easy because you're taking on a very emotional task.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I've had many occurrences where somebody would come up to me after a presentation in tears, right? I talk about our family and our parents and are they proud of you and what you do? Maybe, I talk about how COVID impacted us. I lost both of my in-laws due to COVID, two relatively healthy people for their age, taken from us like
Mm.
that. And, so the takeaway from that is there's a lot of things out there that still can take us down, regardless of what we do for a living. So why not control what you can control, right? Do the right things, be part of the program, follow the procedures, have the right mindset. But there's those times where, like, for example, I worked with the Department of Transportation in Tennessee a few years ago, and they were coming off two fatalities. And when we first started working with them, it was still raw, right? They weren't done processing.
Yeah.
And here we are talking about growing a culture of safety, and they're like, "Could we talk about the elephant in the room kind of thing?" And it took some really hard
Yeah.
conversations, some raw conversations to kind of connect that. And from that point on, oh my gosh, it was one of my favorite clients I've ever worked with. I still work with them in different capacities. Like, we're doing an event. We're actually talking about my role in their culture journey at a conference where all the DOTs in the entire country of the United States are meeting. So I'm excited to just
Mhm.
share my perspective. It's not to talk, I'm not doing my presentation. I'm more talking about the sustainability, the nuts and bolts to it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been doing, like, going back to, you've been doing this for 10 years. You're busy. You're going all over the North America predominantly, but you've been in other places in the world. What's something that you've learned that you've has been a predominant message back to you that, just came from your experiences? What's
hmm
something that's shaping you?
I've learned that we are all the same when you boil it down, right? We might wear different masks. We may wear different clothes. We may have different personas, but at the end of the day, we're all the same, and I'm finding that my message would resonate just as effectively with, again, that entry level employee to that C-suite executive. And I guess the big takeaway for me from that is I use the analogy a lot of, if we treated everyone like we did when we were in elementary school, how much easier would it be? Right? The things we learned in elementary school are the foundation and the fundamentals that we should continue to move on. Now, if you use a tree analogy, we're in the trunk, right? We're all the same. And then as we get older, junior high, high school, graduation, college, we all branch off and we become different parts of the tree, but we're all from the same spot, and I've always treated my friends like that. I've got friends that have gone on to do great things. I've had things that maybe bad times have fallen on them, but I treat them all the same, and
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
a little bit more harsh to the people that have done great things, because I'll check you down like, "Oh, no, no, you're not that person. You're not Esquire. Dude, you're Jeff that I went to junior high with," that kind of thing. And it's great because if we all did that, right? If we all just looked at each other in that same light, how much easier would it be? To answer your question, what have I
I
learned?
agree with you.
Yeah, what I've learned is that we're all the same, and that, for me personally, I've learned that I've got a purpose, right? I've got a calling. We've all got a calling in life. It sounds hokey, to some, but I truly believe that I was meant to do this. Just lucky enough to be able to do
That's
it.
well, and that's something that I don't think a lot of people can say. We're always searching.
I feel guilty sometimes.
Am
I
I
really do.
Yeah,
I really do.
am I doing what I meant to do? Am I making the impact I need to impact? And I love to hear what you're saying, when we boil it all down, we're all the same.
Mhm.
And I've always felt that. I've had the opportunity to see and be part of organizations that had tremendous leaders. And I've also been unfortunate to see some of those organizations shift to a leader that was absolutely horrible.
Mhm.
And then you see the leadership beneath that was so enamored by this great leader before, and now we have this other leader that is just like, where did you come from? Under
Yeah.
which rock did you crawl? And all those same people are just, holding that person up. And I'm thinking, do you not see what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
And this is going to diminish this culture we have at this great organization, this great company. And I had that opportunity to see that. And for this little organization of Utility Safety Partners, I mean, it's not a massive corporation, but it's a little corporation that I have the ability to influence. And then my colleagues who I work with every day, they have the ability to influence. And it has to be meaningful. It has to be real. I don't want to, like, okay, yeah, Mike, you're president. Oh, that's for out there. Internal, I'm Mike Sullivan. You're, Cher Kirk. You're Gary. You're Travis. We're all people. We all have
Yeah.
a job to do, and we got to work together. I don't care titles, whatever. We have to be held ourselves accountable,
Mhm.
and we have to hold each other accountable. That's how I've always tried to approach my role here because I've seen how that can work so effectively
Hmm.
elsewhere. And I've seen how quickly that can erode and disappear and disintegrate in mere moments in an organization. And so, one of the things, and this is again a long-winded diatribe to get to the question, when you see change, when you see a change, like you've had clients where you've been once, twice, maybe three times, have you ever seen that, experience that, wow, this isn't the same place I came to 3 years ago, 5 years ago? What's changed? And how does that motivate you to really impose here? And this message is important.
Well, before I answer that question, I want to just comment about what the beginning part of your diatribe, I believe you used this, right?
Yeah, my
It's
soliloquy.
yeah, right. To capsulize that, and it's something I firmly believe in, is you never make it about you, right? It's about them. It's
That's right.
about us,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a
Us.
true testament to that type of leader are the people you surround yourself with. People like Cher Kirk that you mentioned, right? Phenomenal. She saw me 1,000 years ago in Phoenix, Arizona, and she's like, someday you're going to be on my stage. And thank
Yeah.
you, Cher, for doing that, being diligent, right? But it's those like-minded individuals that we surround ourselves. That's what makes a team effective and productive in work. It's not ever about me. It's about us. I've had, like you said, some
The
good
greater
bosses and
good.
bad bosses. Right. Yeah. Excellence breeds excellence is one of my favorite lines. And, like I said, we've had good bosses, leaders that you would run through a wall for. And then you work for guys that you're like, how did you ever get in a position to lead others?
Yes.
You're doing more
How did you
damage
get
than
there?
good, and man, I can think of a handful of them, that I've unfortunately but I could also think of a lot of people that have impacted me positively. So to answer your
Yeah.
question, I don't see that very often when I go back, but I do see it when I initially have that conversation I talked about in the beginning of this conversation, that checklist qualifying. Why are you asking me to come and talk? How do you see me helping? Because there are a lot of times we're out there where they talk a good game, but then when you scratch the surface, you got some issues, right? And a lot of that
Yeah. Yeah.
I pick up unspoken cues in the audience, right? I pick it up in conversations afterwards. I talk in my legacy message about the sniper, how I had a guy in my audience that was, and we all have them. We all know who that person is, right? It's the guy or gal that,
Yeah.
this is stupid, don't need to be here, don't pay attention. But at one point, that guy flipped and he went from being disgruntled to gruntled, right? Head bobbing up and
Yeah. Yeah.
down
Yeah.
and like he was picking up what I'm laying down. And, afterwards I
Yeah.
had a conversation with him and he was very brutally honest. He's like, Wiley, there is no culture of safety here. It's me watching out for myself because nobody else is buying into it. But if you remember in that story, I had another phone call a couple days later, and the safety manager says, you're not going to believe who just joined my safety committee. And he brought some buddies with him. Right. So
Wow. Yeah.
that right there, even your reaction, I always say it's like finding money in your winter coat. Doesn't happen all the
Hmm.
time, but man, when it does, doesn't that feel good? Right. So if it's just one person, that sniper that was like the total epitome of negativity, got it, man, I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
This message is working. So,
Yeah.
and again, I don't want to make it sound like every client I work with is a dumpster fire, right? They're not all hot messes. A lot of people, like I mentioned earlier, there's already people that are already getting it. And those people use this message to keep that fire going, right? To keep it stoked. But there are those people where you have a conversation with them and you're like, yeah, there's some work to be done. And so then I approach it differently. There's a lot of, like, I have an initial conversation with the client to kind of get the 5 W's out of the way. Who, what, where, when, why, right? And then I'll have another follow
Yeah.
up and
Yeah.
say, let's talk about, how you visualize this event going. How can I be as beneficial as I can for you? My goal is to make you look good, and then,
Yep.
what do you want to take away with? What are the tools that I could leave you with to help keeping this move forward? And
Yeah.
there's even a
Yeah.
little bit of a marketing approach to it all. And something simple as just having a banner for them all to sign or a giveaway. We all give away things. Knit
Hmm.
caps, t-shirts. I mean, I can't tell you how many hoodies I have with clients' names
Mm.
on them. And I love every one of them. And
Yeah.
I try to wear them all the time. But what else are you giving back to your employee that they can use that's not a knit cap, that's not a sticker to put on their hard hat? It's something they can
Mhm.
use every day, and that's part of what I try to provide.
So what's next for you, Wiley? Where are you off to next, and what does this year
Gosh,
look
where am
like
I
for
at
you?
next? I'm back out to Oklahoma in a couple of weeks. We're doing an event out there. And then I have to look at the calendar. There is so much, it's funny because like from January to like June, it's just go, 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 go. And
Yep, yep.
fortunately, unfortunately, like it's great January, February, and March because let's face it, weather in Buffalo, it's so great, right? Yeah, so you love getting out, and everybody wants to have a meeting in a nice warm client or climate, right? We're going to Tampa, we're going to Orlando, Phoenix,
Yeah,
California. I always joke and said my old boss, like he never went to Owatonna, Minnesota. You know, he went to
yeah,
Orlando. I went to the
yeah,
middle of, Michigan or
yeah.
whatever. But
Weird how that is, isn't it?
yes, yes, right. Well, there's, with privilege comes its reward, But
Yeah,
again,
I
I never
suppose.
I never take those. I always ask my client two very important questions when we're in the setting up process. I ask them, where should I eat when I'm there? And don't tell me Applebee's. I want to know, where would you take your family? And I may have asked you the same question because we stayed in Calgary the first night. And what should I see in your city or your town? What are you proud of? I've had so many cool experiences just by asking that second question. I grew up in a town between Buffalo and Niagara Falls called Tonawanda, New York. Our sister city is North Tonawanda, very creative. And there's also a town of Tonawanda too, right? Let's figure that out. But North Tonawanda was also the home of the original carousel. Like you would go to an amusement
Okay.
park and the horses that went up
Yeah,
and
yeah,
down. It was
yeah,
built
yeah.
in my hometown. And I was in Owatonna, Minnesota, I think it was. I can't remember now for sure, but their zoo had a carousel and they didn't know the backstory. And they were so proud of this carousel. They're like, oh my gosh, we had it imported from an amusement park back east. And I'm like, really? And tell me more about it. And sure enough, built in my hometown. When they
No
found
kidding.
that out, like the zoo was closed. It was wintertime, and at least during the day. And they literally opened it up, fired it up, got a chance to ride on it. They were so happy with the fact that someone from their hometown was linked to their pride and joy, part of their environment. That's cool, right? So yes, it's great getting on stage and making a difference, but I love those, like that Vernon story. I love doing those things too. So it's good
Personal
stuff.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So where can people find you, Wiley?
Yeah, well, the internet is always the easiest way. Leavingasafetylegacy.com is the website. Once you click on, you'll see this big head. You can't mistake it. But either that, I have my link to my personal phone number right there on the link. I don't, go through any type of firm or handling, bureaus or anything like that. It's just me, right? I try to keep my head in what's the word I'm looking
Your
for? I
humble
can't.
beginnings.
Yes, yeah. I try to keep that
Yep.
intact,
Your
and
humility.
so yeah,
Yep.
right. When you do call, I answer the phone. When you email, I'm the one answering. Maybe that's part of just the business practice I believe in. But like I said before, when I have these conversations, people tell me it's like I feel like I've known you forever, right? You're just
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
guy. You're just a guy that happens
Yep.
to sell what I'm buying, kind of thing. So it's good
Mhm.
stuff. It's good
Yep.
stuff. But yeah, the internet through channels, right? So yeah,
Yep. Well, Wiley, thanks for doing this.
my
When you
pleasure.
came and you presented at our 40th anniversary, 3 years ago now, that was a celebration for us. It was not
Hmm.
just a safety conference. It was a party. We were celebrating our our forefathers that took the
Yes.
time, the shareholders, to say, we need to do something here in
Hmm.
this province, and where we've come a long way since then, and there's a long way to go, right? I mean, the baton will be
Never
passed to
ends.
others. Yeah, but for that moment, we were going to enjoy us. We were going to celebrate us and celebrate everybody who came before us. And you were
If I
part of
could,
that.
if I
So I
could,
was really,
if I could cheeky insert, you were celebrating your legacy,
yeah, exactly.
right?
We really
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
and you were part of that, and that was it was great. I'm so glad Cher suggested you, and she was pretty firm on that, and I think we both know Cher that when she's firm, that's pretty much it. That's where we're going.
Yeah. And it's
But no,
those
thanks for doing this.
Yeah, those relationships that you make, I had the opportunity to meet Cliff Meidel that same event.
Yes.
I did my first podcast with Jim and James, Coffee with Jim and James. Those
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
I've become good friends with. Side note, my fiance turned 60 yesterday and I bought her one of those
Okay.
blow up things. And if you've ever seen Jim, his Jimmy Shimmy, right? And so I did a video and I sent it to him and I'm like, it's catching on, right? So the
Yeah.
point I'm making is you create those relationships that linger long after the interaction, right? Yeah, I always like to say my presentation isn't transactional, it's transitional, right? It's just a way for you to take it from one point and carry it to the next.
Well, again, thanks for doing this. Good luck to you. And
Thank
I
you.
do hope our paths cross again. And happy birthday to your fiance.
Amy will
She and I
appreciate
are
that.
Aries.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
she and I are
yeah.
Aries. We're 2 days apart. So there you go.
No kidding. Are you coming up or just
Yeah,
celebrated? Coming up?
just celebrated. Yeah, a few
Yeah,
days before her. Yeah.
nice.
It was a
And so
milestone one for me. So I just turned 60.
her as well. Her as well.
No
Yeah,
way.
you guys are
Wow.
like spirit animals.
I think so. That's got to be what
And
it
I
is. And both from back east.
And you'll probably agree, and she says all the time, it's probably the worst time of year to have a birthday because it's not nice outside. You can't go outside. So we
Not
always
yet.
normally we make it her birthday month and we try to go away. We try to do nice things, but her turning 60, it's now the year of Amy. So all year
Wow.
long, we've got things planned. I jokingly say that the Chinese have been notified. They realize it's the year of Amy. They're trying to decide what animal best represents her. But no, it's all good stuff. So happy birthday to you as
Yeah.
well.
Well, thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks.